last kind of tip for you guys, for new entrepreneurs, is I think you need to catch fire for a specific problem, for a specific set of users, before biting off more than you can chew. Yeah, cool. So Jim asked me to just share some lessons I've learned throughout my career. So I wanted to kind of walk you guys quickly through the couple, different areas of my career so far and some lessons I've learned along the way. I would say most of this advice is definitely geared towards first-time founders, probably even particularly students. Not sure how many of those are here today, but yeah, we'll get going. Cool, yeah, okay, so the eras of my career so far. So started a company in college called SoundAround. Was really my first foray into startups at all. Started a company after that called StatusPage, which I think is really kind of the formative experience of my, just kind of startup life so far. Relatively young, only 34, and worked on StatusPage for about 7 years. So most of my experience kind of comes from that. And then, yeah, still kind of had a good exit, still trying to figure out how I navigate those next steps. So I'm sure I'll want to talk to Todd kind of later about some of that.
Can you tell us what StatusPage did?
Yeah, so StatusPage, very literal name. So you can think of it as a support tool that companies would use to tell their customers when they're having an outage. So kind of crucially, if you're gonna have like a web page on the internet that talks about the status of your infrastructure, you want it hosted, outside of the rest of your stuff, such that if your website is down, you don't want your status page to go down with it. So it was kind of an external tool, had a bunch of other kind of bells and whistles attached to it, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's a communication tool that companies use to tell their customers when they're having downtime. Okay, so yeah, my first experience in college, I really had no idea what I wanted to do when I got to college. Bopped around majors a couple times. It was like Spanish education, thought I wanted to be a lawyer, so I was doing poli-sci for a little bit. And I kind of randomly saw this flyer for an entrepreneurship meetup on campus. Grabbed one of the pamphlets, went to it on a whim. I think it's kind of cliche, but I was very taken by this idea that you can start a company and control your own destiny. I thought that was very interesting and just kind of loved something about that. Coincidentally, so my brother, who also was going to NC State, we were roommates, kind of best friends, and has been my co-founder in all the companies that we've started, was doing this thing at NC State called the Engineering Entrepreneurship Program. So we kind of got the entrepreneurship bug kind of at the same time. And it's 2010. We're like early adopters of the iPhone. This is like the time where like iPhones like blowing up, becoming very popular. And we're like looking around for startup ideas, and we see this big like mobile wave coming. So we're very interested in doing a startup around that somehow. And Scott's my co-founder was a comp sci major. He's like a back-end web developer. Kind of has this inside knowledge that the iPhone app development is head and shoulders much more difficult than just like web development. So kind of put these two ideas together and have this plan like, hey, let's build this tool that makes it easy for folks to build their own iPhone app. So we think about, okay, who might be interested in this, and we're in college, so we're like, okay, maybe college newspapers or college sports teams, or who knows, maybe hotels, maybe we have a couple friends that are in a band, like maybe bands are interested in this. So we end up settling on bands. So we're gonna build this tool, makes it easy for bands to like build their own iPhone app. Co-founder's a back-end web developer and is like learning how to do iPhone development. And we need someone who can build a marketing site, do design for the website, design for the apps. And I kind of take it upon myself and like, I'm not majoring this or anything at all, but just kind of brute force my way into, I'm gonna learn this. So I go to the school library and I get a book on HTML and CSS, and I copy all the websites I can find and take a bunch of design tutorials and just like learn how to do design and front-end web development. Which kind of brings me to the first tip I like to give, especially kids in college and first-time entrepreneurs. But I like to call it permissionless entrepreneurship. So between me and my co-founder, like, we were able to build and ship this product that we wanted to sell, with a couple $100s of web services. And the customers that we kind of ended up selecting were the kinds of customers that, like, all these other people, there's so much red tape. There's so much like long sales cycles if you're trying to sell to like a college or what have you. But we kind of stumbled on this lesson of like, oh man, bands control their own, they control their own wallet. They can buy it with a credit card. You don't need all this trust that is hard to come by as college kids. So between the two of us, we were kind of able to build and launch and sell the whole thing. So I think if you're just getting into entrepreneurship, I kind of always advise people to try and do the same thing, because it's hard when you're just starting out. The way that story ends, by the way, so we're living in Raleigh. In Durham, there's a company called Reverb Nation. Reverb Nation makes like a toolbox of marketing tools for bands. So Reverb Nation acquired the company that we'd started, SoundAround. We became another marketing tool in their marketing toolbox. Okay, so we worked at Reverb Nation for a couple years, and then we both leave around the same time, and we're, this is me and my co-founder, we're just doing consulting, so building websites and apps for folks in the Raleigh-Durham area. And we had this idea like, in between clients, we want to build some just really targeted, like B2B software as a service apps that can throw off some passive income. And hey, maybe one day this thing, a couple years out, will make $5,000 a month, and me and you can split it. And holy shit, $2,500 a month each. We're set. This is great. We're 25 at the time. So the first one that we try is this company that ends up goes on to do well, StatusPage. So it's a way for, it's a simple tool. It's a way for companies to just tell their customers when they're having downtime. We have some success early on, land a couple good customers. We, on a whim, kind of applied to Combinator and got in, took on another co-founder. And we really didn't raise that much money afterwards. We didn't raise that much money, and we honestly didn't really need to. We weren't paying ourselves great, but like we were paying ourselves a livable salary. And I think we kind of wanted to stay small for as long as we could. Not that we wanted to stay small, but like we wanted to do sales and support ourselves for a long time. And the reason for that is when you're a young company, like the learnings that you get from customer interaction is so much more important than the operational efficiency that comes with like hiring salespeople, hiring support folks. And so we didn't want to give that away too early before we felt confident that we had a product market fit. So this graph, I think, really helps illustrate that. When it's just a few of you, like when it's just the three of us in the room listening to Danny on a sales call, like we all have perfect information about like what our customers saying about our product. But as you grow, as you hire support, and support's having all these great conversations with customers about the problem and your product, and sales is doing the same thing. The amount of like overhead that goes into sharing that information with everyone such that you can find product market fit together increases exponentially. And so each of these like lines, is representative of like some amount of information sharing that has to go into everyone having the context that you need to get to product market fit. And by the way, there's like a ton of information loss that happens along the way. So I like to tell first-time founders, like, do sales and support for like as long as you can. It kind of sucks, but the learnings that come from it are, frankly, they're more important than you getting good sleep right now. Okay.
Can you tell everyone what Atlassian does, the acquirer of your company?
Yeah, so Atlassian makes, maybe you heard of Jira, that's their big product. So they have kind of a suite of products around, what would you can call that? Like ticketing and like dev, like sprint planning, like is how I would describe Jira, and they're probably the biggest player in the space. They bought Trello which is like another kind of like Kanban card thing, and then Confluence, which is like it's kind of like similar like SharePoint or like Notion, obviously. So it's kind of like a big like internal wiki kind of product. Yeah, and then we sold to Atlassian. That's a whole other story, but just thinking about the future of StatusPage in general and the incident management space and workflow is so big, and I'll actually talk about this a little bit later. The status communication part is such a small part of that. We were thinking we either need to raise money and kind of venture into these bigger adjacent spaces, or get acquired by a company that is thinking about some of the bigger pieces in that whole like workflow and tool set and kind of be a part of their story. And so ultimately that's kind of what we were for Atlassian. Yeah, so we grew StatusPage for, on our own for like 4 years to about 4 million in ARR. And then we're acquired by Atlassian. So moved out to San Francisco as part of that. Cool. Okay, so after Atlassian, so moved back home. So moved to Apex, right outside of Raleigh. My family, my wife's family are from here, so definitely knew we wanted to move back home. My son was born a month later, so I had 2 kids. Knew I wanted to take a bunch of time off. Was kind of exhausted after after StatusPage. Honestly, didn't even know. Frankly, was kind of burnt out and like didn't know if I even wanted to work in tech anymore. But just took a year off. Was great to be able to spend a ton of time with my much more time with my second kid this time around. Just not having a job. As time went on, there's only so much video games and golfing by yourself during the week you can stomach. Like early retirement sounds good, but if your friends are working all the time, it's doesn't work out that great. Okay, so so there was about kind of a year of time off, and then decided, cool, I need something. I like feeling like I'm part of a bigger team. I happen to be good at startups. We'll get back into the startup game. I had grown accustomed to this idea of being able to make my own schedule, though, which is kind of incongruent with being a startup. So I hatched this master plan of, hey, I'll angel invest in really early stage startups. Sorry, I thought I totally missed a slide, but I didn't. I'll invest in really early stage startups, come on as a co-founder for 3 to 6 months, and then send them off into the sunset, which I think sounded good in theory, but in practice, when there's like a known expiration date on your time at a company, like you don't get that same co-founder feel. So that was a kind of swing and a miss around what I could do after StatusPage. I got really interested in the idea of like trying to help the Raleigh and Durham like startup community grow, and then COVID happened. And then, I don't know, I was having a lot of different feelings around that. Like, what does it even mean in this post-COVID world to have a local startup community when most companies are mostly remote? I've had a lot of thoughts since then, but I was kind of, put off by that whole idea during COVID, and COVID was just, obviously crazy, 2 young kids, Jesus Christ. Let's see, some time goes by. Okay, so a couple of the first StatusPage employees go on to start this company, Launch Notes. So I agreed to invest in that. I'm not really doing anything at the time, so kind of agreed to work part-time with them for just equity. So couple random things. Redid their marketing site, rebuilt their kind of like new sign-up onboarding flow, joined as like the head of, and then I joined one of their co-founders left, so I joined full-time as the head of product, and then I spent a year and a half building a community, so doing more of like a marketing thing, which I kind of built and grew for about a year and a half to about 600 people, so super interesting experience there as well. Okay, Launch Notes. Launch Notes, by the way, okay, what is Launch Notes? Launch Notes is, so product managers use a handful of different tools to talk to customers and internally about the things that they've launched, the things that they're working on, and then God, there's this whole other related thing, which is like customer feedback comes in from customers and is relayed by sales and support, and that lives in like 1,000 different tools itself. So Launch Notes tries to put all of those things like under one roof. So you kind of manage the communication workflow from customer feedback to, hey, this is on a roadmap, we're building it, to, hey, we built this and you need to know about it. Okay, so on one hand, I really see the value of like combining a lot of parts of a workflow under one tool. And LaunchNotes has found a little bit of traction and has some great customers, but I think we're still trying to find product market fit. There's definitely not that feeling, at least that we had in like StatusPage, where it's like, things are easy, this is flying off the shelves, sales cycles are quick, people get it. And I think part of that reason is I think we tried to do too much too quickly. And I think my last kind of tip for you guys, for new entrepreneurs, is I think you need to catch fire for a specific problem, for a specific set of users before biting off more than you can chew, before trying to solve all the parts of a workflow that your grand vision hopes to solve. Yeah, I think that's it for me. What am I doing now? Let's see. So I actually left LaunchNotes a couple weeks ago. Planning on taking the summer off. So I've been doing community stuff for them for the past year and a half. I've learned so much about community, especially as a go-to-market motion. And I'm incredibly, in the right context, incredibly bullish on community as a growth channel for startups. However, I think community and marketing in general is a good appendage of a startup, but product is the heart of a startup. So my roots are more in like product management, so I think I ultimately want to get back into product management in a couple months. So that's me.